Hey everyone, welcome to the virtual Midrash. I'm your host, Doug Hamp, and Bob Rico is hanging out with me. We're going to have an awesome time. Bob, let's get into the text and then we'll come back and we will talk on it. All right, let's jump right in, guys, because there is so much to talk about, a lot to talk about in this parasha. So here we go. Now, Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head. And he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land in which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south. And in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? There is none other than the house of God. This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Then Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he put at his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city had been Luz previously. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone, which I have set as a pillar, shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you. All right. Well, goodness, nothing like making deals with God, right? I mean, here, this guy is what we call a chutzpan, right? He's a chutzpan. He has the audacity to make these decrees like, well, okay, God, if you do this, then tell you what, I'll do this, right? Like none of us have ever done that, right? I mean, obviously we've done things like that. Not that we should, but we have. And it's just not healthy at all when God is making this beautiful promise to him. And then he's like, well, okay, if you do it, then you can be my God. I don't know. Is there hope for the rest of us? What do you think, Bob?
What's interesting to me is this is the guy who was the A student in the front of the tent with his father in learning the laws of God from Abraham all the way to his dad. And he was the most attentive. He was the one of the tent, as opposed to his brother, who was the one of the field. Although his brother, Esau, sat in the tent listening attentively to his father and having a great time with the family. But we all know who really valued those words, who valued the values as depicted by Yitzhak. So now it's the years and years and years that pass. And finally, in his late 20s or so, or 30s rather, all that is going to be put to the test. And so there he is in Beersheba, one of the lowest parts of Israel, the place where promises were made. And he then is instructed by his dad, do not, under any circumstances, get a wife from the Canaanites. These people you will not get a wife from. I will tell you, you can kind of, sort of go north. Not that I want to be very specific, but you're going to go up to where your mother came from. I remember that place vividly. Badan Aram. That's where you're going. And you're going to go to the house of Bethuel, and he has a son by the name of Laban. Not that I'm going to tell you what to do, but I want you to get a wife from there. Okay? Can I be more specific? So he sets off and he goes on his adventure, which is interesting because it's been a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And his brother has married. We've also seen the story last week. Mm-hmm. We saw that. And we realized what values he really had. And as he goes up, I imagine there was a time when Yitzhak took both boys up to this very special place in the mountains of Moriah. And there told the story of the greatest test their grandfather was ever going to have. And that place was very special. And I would also imagine that he told him that he submitted to his father. What's interesting is he is submitting to his father now. So he travels up to Jerusalem, better known as Luz, to the mountain of Bethel, of Moriah. And there he lays down for the night. It was getting late. And he has his encounter, but none other than El Shaddai. And the rest is history.
And you know, what's interesting is that this ladder idea is something that we find in the ancient Near East. I talked about this in Corrupting Image, Volume 2, that the Babylonians believed their ziggurats, or their step pyramids, were actually ladders or bridges between the domains of man and the domain of the gods. And in fact, Babel, right, Babel, it means gate of the gods. Right. And you know, when you start hearing some of the terms, right, the ziggurat in Babylon, the temple of the foundation of heaven and earth, the temple of the wielder of the 7 degrees of heaven and earth, temple of the stairway to pure heaven, right, and on they go, right. This is the kind of language. It was also the bond of a union whose purpose was to assure communication between earth and heaven. It was a giant step ladder by means of which a man may ascend as near as possible to the sky. All right, so this was man's idea of how they could reach God. Here, God is using a ladder to reach down to man, right? That is absolutely beautiful. And of course, you know, when Andrew is all, you know, was it Andrew? Was it Philip?
Yes.
Philip.
Philip tells Andrew.
Yeah, and he's all amazed, like, wow, you must be the Messiah. He's like, you're impressed by that? Okay, you're going to see greater stuff than that. You're going to see, you know, angels ascending on the Son of Man, right? So Jesus is claiming to be the ladder. He is the ladder between heaven and earth. That is what is so astounding. He's the connection point between man and God.
And there's going to be and it's also it's a holy place, and that a sacrifice was there. Mm-hmm. And that whole idea behind it. And from that place, there is a ladder that extends from heaven to earth. The rabbis had a very interesting way of interpreting the term for the ladder. It was, the word itself, Sulam.
Yeah.
It's also a metaphor for wealth and poverty. The idea that, first of all, it's in this case, it's a ladder, it's a rung, and you put your hands on each side of that rung. So you must be fastened securely between heaven and earth. And it's faith on one hand and action on the other. And each step, it must be on reality, must be real. It must be it must be truth. And the entire ladder comes from heaven and establishes truth on earth. So there's that concept, and there's these messengers that are coming from heaven down, and some are going up, and it isn't a stairwell, but it is a ladder. And so there's this effort that's being made to come up and go down and up and go down. How big was that ladder? I have no idea. But in his mind, he is seeing it.
Right.
And he is realizing all those ideas that there is wealth up there and there is poverty down here. And you can make a difference by traveling both directions. You can make a difference by bringing heaven to earth. Right. You can make a difference from this miserable life to bringing in God into your life.
Yeah. And
so that whole idea is that this is a holy place.
Yeah.
And my family, this is what's really fascinating. We have lost touch with heritage of where we came from, who we are. Well, there's the old saying, if you don't know where you came from, you don't know who you are, and you don't know where you're going.
Yep.
And that's a very true thing. When you're adopting new kinds of ideas, it has to be backed against reality. Where did you come from? What promises are you carrying in your bosom, in your life? What are the ideas that your family, sitting down around the table, sitting on a couch on the Shabbat and discussing the Torah? You brought a very interesting idea that was Andrew. And there's another indication that the readings were already pretty well established, right? Because Jesus says, oh, you're the one that was reading about angels ascending and descending. So what is he saying to him? You are faithful to the Torah. You're more, but you just signed up and you just won the big prize. Because what's happened now is you're going to see greater than that you've been reading about. You're faithful. You could be doing something else, but on this Shabbat, you are reading about this ladder. And little do you know, my friend, I'm the one that was there. I am El Shaddai. I am Yehovah. You don't know it now, my friend, but you will. So, in our faithfulness to discover, in our faithfulness to reach out, maybe things we don't even know about in the scriptures, but being faithful and having faith, confidence, reliance that God is going to reveal himself when I make the effort to find him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to just mention that the ladder between heaven and earth, the language is interesting. It says there was a ladder established to the earth and to the heaven, right? So in the Babylonian system, it was clearly on the earth, and they were trying to get it up to heaven. And that was really the whole problem with the Tower of Babel.
Right.
He wasn't against tall buildings. That's not the problem. God is against man trying on his own, by his own means, to build a system of communication with the gods, not with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not with the God of heaven and earth, but with the gods of Babel, right? The gods of Babylon, with the fallen angels. That's who they were trying to commune with, right? This wasn't just some innocent little thing, and then God's like, I don't like tall buildings, I'm going to knock it down, or confuse their language. Not at all. It was a very, very dangerous thing that they were doing. This project was very dangerous, and it tells you that they would have succeeded had God not intervened. Okay. So they were going to achieve their desired outcome, which was to have a portal of communication. And the cool thing is, God doesn't need tall buildings. He's like, I don't need any of that stuff. I am the door, right? I'm the door.
Yeah. The fascinating thing is that there was no veil then, right? And you could actually see into heaven. You could actually see it right there. It's just right up there.
Oh, you think before the Tower of Babel or what?
Yeah, I think that God sealed it all up during that entire period. He finally said, that's it, I'm done. Because it gives you the notion when the Godhead says, let us go see and look down and see what they're doing. There's a notion that there's a reciprocal idea of they are seeing this place and they're seeing as, how can I get there? How can I get there? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you could, and there's nothing that you couldn't do, but I'm gonna try this one. Back to the Wile E. Coyote thing, right?
Right.
Well, let's see. We're not going to do anything to it except we're just going to change your language. Language groups of families are going to be, this is going to speak Hindi, this is going to speak some other language. And then you guys could try to form up all over again. And that's been the same central concept and idea of Hasatan, to try, if you look all through history, whether it's Alexander the Great or you name them, they all wanted to make a uniform language, a uniform culture, and a uniform religion. That's been the goal of the Antichrist all along. It's interesting that back in the first century, Greek was the language that communicated and tied the world together, which was one of the dreams of Alexander the Great. And it was the roads of Rome that traveled, that eventually led to the diaspora, and for the going over those same roads for the gospel. And now today, the language of the world is English. The language of commerce is English. The language of science is English. So we're all back to the same place. And these are the days in which we should look up.
I love it. It's fascinating stuff. It's so cool. Well, let's get to 29. There's,
okay.
More to come here. All right. So Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. And he looked and saw a well in the field. And behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks. A large stone was on the well's mouth. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the well's mouth. And Jacob said to them, my brethren, where are you from? And they said, we are from Haran. Then he said to them, do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, we know him. So he said to them, is he well? And they said, he is well. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep. Then he said, look, it is still high day. It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go and feed them. But they said, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered together. And they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. Now while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, that his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. So she ran and told her father. Then it came to pass when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this you've done to me? Why is it not Rachel that I serve for? Why then have you deceived me? And Laban said, it must not be done so in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years. Then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. And Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Then Jacob also went into Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served with Laban still another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. For she said, the Lord has surely looked on my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me this son also. And he called his name Shimon. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and she stopped bearing. Wow. Well, the trickster got tricked. I think that's that's all it could be. You know, here the trickster was, well, he really did pulled a fast one on his father, on his brother, and now he is getting the same medicine. So, not good, not good, not good. I find it so frustrating and just infuriating that Laban would do that to his daughter. It seems like he has no regard for his 2 daughters. He's more concerned about getting his stuff for himself than he is concerned about the welfare of his daughters. And you feel this with Leah. I mean, how can you not feel for this woman? You know, here it wasn't her fault, right? She didn't want to be part of this, but she did what her dad told her to do, and that's happened. And now she's stuck, and the rest of her life is marked by this sense of being unloved, unwanted, uncared for, and always in second place. And she names her kids, these names that reflect that sense of, I wish I were loved, but, look, Reuben, right? Reuben is look at the sun. That's literally what it means. Look at the sun. Everyone, it's in the plural. Everybody look at the sun. And right? And then look, Shimon, right? Because God has heard me because I was unloved, and now he's given me another son. And then Levi, now you're going to be attached to me. You got 3 boys, man. You're rich. This is what you want. Every man's dream is to have 3 sons. This is amazing. Nope. And then, then she has Judah, Yehuda. And, still, we don't know that. I don't know whether he despised her, but just he certainly didn't love her in the way that he loved Rachel. And I don't know, it's just sad. So you're muted, by the way.
There might be some understanding about some of this. I can't help but think about the mother of these 2 sons, Yaakov and Esau, right? Esau was number 1. His mother was a trickster. That's basically what she's called. And she lives it out. She is a trickster. She tricked her husband and lied to him. Through the son, she receives a curse for that she asked for when Jacob says, I can't do this against my dad. I can't do this. I will not do this. And she says, do it and I will pay for it. God heard that. Done. And the rest is history. It would seem that the encouragement was to go very specifically to this family, to Laban. Now, all things being equal, suppose Esau would have not married the Hittites or the children or the daughters, rather, of Canaan, right? Where would he have received his wife? And which wife would he have received from Laban? He would have received Leah.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? Whether he did or not, she produces a double portion of God's promise by the number of children that she has, along with her handmaiden. Rachel would have been the second one and would have gone to Jacob. And that's kind of an irony of biblical history, that she could not bear, and she bears with her handmaid 4 out of the 12, and her sister has 8 children, a double portion to the firstborn. Isn't that interesting? In terms of God's promises that we will see later on coming in through the Torah at Sinai, about the double blessing and the firstborn, etc. So we see God's principles already enacted before the Torah was given at Sinai. And we get to see a little bit of the culture and the expectation of what would have happened if things would have worked out differently. But we see the pattern that's there. And we see God's faithfulness in spite of what we do. That he is always going to be honoring principles that he already has, values that he already has, that he's acting on, whether we understand them or not. He will still live up to those principles.
Wow. That's really good. And, something that it took me a while to finally understand is that he worked 7 years for Rachel, but he got Leah. And then it says complete her week. So that was a literal 7 days where he was enjoying the nuptials of his marriage to Leah. And then on the 8th day, okay,
he gets married.
Then he gets married again, and he takes Rachel. Okay. So that's to how to understand that, just so people can get that. And then he buys her on credit, basically. Okay.
Right. That's exactly right.
He buys her on credit, and he's got to pay her off for the next 7 years. Well,
the term that he uses there, he says, I'll work as a common worker. I don't even have to have status. I mean, that's how much he wanted. He was committed to her. Mm-hmm. And that's what the word says. I'm just a common laborer. I'll be just your common labor for her. Mm-hmm. That's how much commitment. And Laban said, well, let me think about that. Well, I can squeeze you down from being a son-in-law. And let's see, you said it out of your own mouth as a common laborer. That comes up later on. And when he's angry, Jacob is angry. You changed my wages 10 times, blah, blah, blah. And I imagine he sat there with it, and Laban is sitting there with his mouth, it's kind of a chuckle. And he says, you told me common labor wages. You said, I know, I told you, you just pick it how much you want and I'll do it. But then you turn around and say, I will give anything for your daughter. I'll be a common laborer. Oh, very interesting. We'll see how this works out. So, whenever we impetuously are excited about something, we have to tie our lips first, engage the brain, get to reality and then speak after you thought about it. You know, there's an old saying that I don't know if it's said anymore, but you know, I'll sleep about it. I'll sleep in about that. Let me think about it. Let me think about it, and I'll come back to you tomorrow and I'll tell you. I'll give you a decision. That's a wise thing to do. Don't just, well, she's such a gorgeous woman, and she probably was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely wisdom in taking a little time to think things over. So,
you know, all those lessons are right there. I mean, they're just sitting there and low-hanging fruit to just grab it and then start tying the scriptures together and going, well, man, not everybody, he wasn't an evil man. He was a conniving man. Look at the daughter that he produced. She was just like him. Mm-hmm. She was conniving also, right? And then Jacob is what? A mama's boy, right? Mm-hmm. And all those ideas, she popped into his ears. And here we are. You know, what goes around comes around is the old saying. And here it is. Yep. So we have to, in terms of our own fatherhood, our familyhood, and how we operate with one another, I mean, we all come in with our own baggage into a marriage. Yeah. You know, and some people call it bangage and bang each other with a baggage. But at any rate, the fact is that whatever's in those bags, whatever those bags contain, it's going to come out to the children. And we'll find out what they are like. You have to wait until you're 30, 40 years old to find out. And in the case of Jacob, he found out it was a terrible price that he was paying. I know one of the interesting things here, I ticked off some of the promises he made God, right? Here's my contract. Keep me in my way to find Laban the Aramean. Well, here's the answer. Bing, check that one off. You got it. You got there. He didn't. The text doesn't say that he went wandering around looking for Laban. The first thing he said is, "If you know about Laban, oh yeah, he's right up the road here." The next thing you know, oh, there's his daughter. And God's saying, "You want to negotiate with me, right? Okay, negotiate." Another situation that's kind of humorous.
So funny. All right, let's jump into the next chapter here. We got more amazing stuff to look at. All right, now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" So she said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her." So she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as a wife, and Jacob went into her, and Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "A troop comes." So she called his name Gad. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed." So she called his name Asher. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you've taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages, because I have given my mate to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, "God has endowed me with good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons." So she called his name Zebulun. Afterward she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, send me away, that I may go to my own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me go. For you know my service, which I have done for you. And Laban said to him, please stay if I found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. Then he said, name your wages, and I will give it. So Jacob said to him, you know how I have served you, and how your livestock has been with me. For what you had before I came was little, and it has increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming. And now, when shall I also provide for my own house? So he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. If you will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep your flocks. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages. So my righteousness will answer for me in time to come, when the subject of my wages comes before you. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the lambs, will be considered stolen if it is with me. And Laban said, oh, that it were according to your word. So remove that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, everyone that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hand of his sons. Then he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled with white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the clods and the rods. And the rods which he had peeled he set before the flocks in the gutters, and the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the streaked, and all the brown of the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves, and did not put them with Laban's flock. And it came to pass, whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks, female, male servants, camels, and donkeys. All right. Well, first of all, talk about family feud, right? And every name is a representation of the family feud. I think we should not overlook that. And for all eternity, those names of the family feud are going to be etched on the doors of New Jerusalem, right? We're going to see those, right? This is the gate of God, right? Gad, God, of the troop, right? And here's Dan. Well, I don't know if it's Dan, but anyway, you have all this contention, right? There's this angst, there's this disharmony that is in the camp, and the names are reflected of that very thing. And you can see that, Rachel's like, I have wrestled with my sister. Really? What a bummer that you have all this feuding going on, and yet God can use that. And I hope this is encouraging to people, because, you might say, my family is so dysfunctional. There's no way that God could ever use us. There is no way that God could possibly bring anything good out of my family. And yet he can. Here is a massively dysfunctional family, massively. All right. And they're not all happy, not by any stretch of the imagination. They're dysfunctional. They're in each other's face. They're in each other's business. And their kids' names are the proof. But God is faithful. God is able to take the lousy, the broken, the dysfunctional, and to still use it for his greater purpose. It doesn't mean that there aren't hard knocks along the way, because there are. But what it means is that God will use that to still accomplish his greater goal. And I'm just encouraged by that, incredibly encouraged.
Yeah, as we were talking earlier, that it's amazing how we find so much grace in the Hebrew Bible. We find it in the Torah. We find it here. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? right? Can anything good come out of Galil? Can anything good come out of this family? We ask ourselves, can any good come out of my family? If we look at our own backgrounds and on where we came from and all the situation of our own family tree, we turn around and say, thank you, Lord. Good came out of this. Your good came out of this. I was going to mention something about Dan. You know, he's the first one that's born to Leah's handmaiden. Little did they know that in the future, whatever those circumstances were, Dan is not mentioned in the book of the Apocalypse of all the tribes that are mentioned. Dan isn't one of them. I think it's one of the other. I don't know if the tribe of Joseph or no. It's one of his sons. I think it takes the place of that. So it's interesting that things can change, but we have to be optimistic and be expecting back to the ladder and expect that good is going to come down. And that we have our feet on solid truth and we put our hands in faith and action, then we can scurry up that ladder no matter how long it takes or how difficult it is to go up that ladder.
Mm-hmm. And let me just point out that Dan is actually mentioned in the book of Ezekiel chapter 48. So here you have the names of the gates of the city.
Oh,
this
okay.
is the New Jerusalem, by the way.
Yeah, right. Right. That's right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and one gate for Dan. All right. So in the book of Revelation, I'm pretty sure it just says that the names of the gates were of the 12 patriarchs. Right. So what I know, Dan did some really lousy stuff, and we don't see him mentioned. We don't see his tribe mentioned in the 144,000. That is absolutely true.
Right.
And yet but we still do see him as one of the gates of the city, right? Because you know what? God can redeem the unredeemable, what seems to us unredeemable, in ways that we do not understand. And so, again, there's really a lot of hope, right? There's always hope in the Lord. If you'll just humble yourself, come back to him, he'll find a way. So I don't know exactly what Dan's ultimate destiny is, but I bet it's better than we think.
We have, yeah. The most surprised person in heaven is going to be ourselves.
Right.
We're going to be pitching ourselves. Oh, this is all true. This is real. This is all real. I'm here.
Oh, that's going to be good. Good times coming. I look forward to that. Well, so then, okay, after roughly, it's been now 14 years, right? Now he wants to get out of Dodge. He's going to take him roughly another 6 years to kind of make it out, right? So it's going to be 20 years altogether before he gets out of there. And so now he has to work for his wages for his own stuff, right? He's worked 14 years for these two women, one of which he didn't want, okay? But it was a package deal. It was a twofer, right? It was a BOGO, right? Buy one, get one. and actually so he actually bought two, got two with the handmaidens. And so now he's got 4 wives. And he's like, oh my goodness. All right, I need to get out of here. What's he going to do? So we have the whole thing about the speckled sheep, right? And this is one of those Bible difficulties that sometimes skeptics will look at and say, oh, see how ridiculous this is. Well, first of all, I want to point out just a couple things. First of all, for those of us who are not sheep breeders, maybe we should kind of close our mouth before we start criticizing what Jacob did. Maybe we don't fully understand what he was up to. Secondly, he did have God on his side. Okay, so it seems that he already had something, like God was with him and blessing him and giving him insight as to what he could possibly do. And then there are some important clues in the text that I think would really be good for us to take a look at. So let's kind of go back and just take a look at this, because this is one of those areas where it can be really confusing. Okay, so he says he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the females who were speckled and spotted, everyone that had some white in it, and gave the brown ones among the lambs and gave them into the hand of his sons. All right, so he gets everything that's speckled and spotted, all right, et cetera, et cetera. And then, so he's now splitting these up. So Jacob took some rods of green, exposed them, and he puts them in the gutters, so that when they come along, what's happening is these lambs are apparently seeing this while they're getting some water, and if the females are drinking at this point, then the males would come up behind them, and it says that they would conceive, right? The flocks conceived before the rods. Okay, that means that they're they're mating at this point while they're looking at these things. Now, maybe we don't know exactly if these things kind of bedazzled these animals. Maybe they're like, wow, that's really pretty, or they were just somehow captivated by the by these strips of almond and chestnut trees. It could be that they were tasty. We actually have a rabbit, and our rabbit amazingly likes to eat apple branches. Okay, so we have an apple tree in our backyard, and one day I just thought, I wonder, bunnies like to chew on things, and maybe I'll give her a branch, and it turns out she loves them. Okay, I can give her other branches, and she doesn't like those branches, right? She will only chew on the apple branches. I guess, I don't know. I'm not a bunny. Maybe those are better, So there's something about those that really appeals to the bunny. All right. So maybe there's something about these that maybe this has been lost. Maybe I just have no idea, because I don't know anything about sheep, and I can't throw stones at this whole theory because I don't know anything about sheep. Okay. I just don't know. But Jacob did. He's been taking care of sheep for a long time at this point. He's an expert in this, and he has some insight. And, he kind of add the secret sauce, which is God's blessing him in this whole thing, and it works out. And he's able to increase the size of his flock significantly, right, through using this particular method that encouraged the breeding at the right times and under the conditions that he wanted. That's the important part. Right, he was the one who was encouraging this breeding at the time that he wanted, and then when he didn't want it, he was not encouraging that. All right, and so that's how he ended up with all of these strong and speckled sheep. Right, and so it's great stuff. And sometimes we just have to take a little bit, think about it. It's good to read articles. There is a great article on Answers in Genesis on this. I encourage people to check that out. There's also another one on Got Questions. You can check that out. And of course, there's all kinds of books written on Bible difficulties. So if you have questions, or sometimes maybe your family or friends have questions, you can take them to these places, and they'll get some good answers on those topics. All right, what do you say? Should we keep going to 31?
Well, I had something to say a little bit about.
Please, go ahead.
About this. I call it the intervention and direction. After 6 years of doing this, he becomes extraordinarily wealthy. Back to the promise, right? And the promise is, if you do the following things, well, the first one just got checked off when he first met Laban, and you provide bread to eat and clothing. Now it's coming to the next provision, which is one in which I think it's kind of humorous. Return to my father's homeland in shalom, in peace. That I don't have to deal with criminals. I don't have to deal with any bandits. I don't have to deal with any of these kind of folk. And if you do that, I'll give you 10% of everything I got, A. B, and then you'll have the privilege of being my God. How's that? So God says, okay. Oh, it's 20 years. It's interesting, the term or the number 20. Was God faithful to Abraham? Yes. Was he patient with Abraham? Well, let's see. He waits. He tells him, get out of here, right? Get out, and go over to a land that I'm going to show you. I'm going to take you there. I'm going to take you to Canaan. Oh yeah, the cursed land. Okay. But he stays with his father until he passes for 20 years. And all of a sudden he leaves. Well, guess what? 20 years pass. I don't know. Is this a pattern with God? Is he that patient with us? He has to wait 20 years so that he can become our God. Interesting.
Wow.
You think about that. He's going, okay, fine. What was your deal? Well, let's see. In verse 31, what's the deal?
Mm-hmm.
I am the God of Bethel. I came to collect. Right? It's been 20 years. Oh, excuse me. Oh, it's the next chapter. Sorry.
Okay.
About that.
Okay. It's all right.
I got ahead of myself. Sorry.
Well, it's good stuff.
It's going to be the same principle. We'll see it again.
All right. It's a preview. All right. Let's check that out. All right, let's check that out. Okay. So we'll get to 31. Yep. All right. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has acquired all this wealth. And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban. Indeed, it was not favorable toward him as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock and said to them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not favorable toward me as before, but the God of my father has been with me. And you know that with all my might I have served your father, yet your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not allow him to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore speckled. And if he said thus, the streaks shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore streak. So God has taken away the livestock from your father and given it to me. And it happened at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the rocks were streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. Then the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift your eyes now and see all the rams which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray spotted. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now arise, get out of this land and return to the land of your family. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there still any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not considered strangers by him? For he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. For all these riches which God has taken from our family are really ours and our children's. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do it. Then Jacob rose and set his sons and his wives and camels, and he carried away all his livestock and all his possessions, which he had gained, his acquired livestock, which he had gained in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the household idols that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unknown to Laban the Syrian, and that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he fled with all that he had. He arose and crossed the river and headed toward the mountains of Gilead. And Laban was told on the third day that Jacob had fled. Then he took his brethren with him and pursued him for 7 days' journey, and he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. But God had come to Laban the Syrian in the dream by night and said to him, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. So Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mountains of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done that you've stolen away unknown to me and carried away my daughters like captives, taken with the sword? Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs, with timbrel and harp. And you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly in so doing. It is in my power to harm you, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. And now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Then Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, perhaps you would take my daughters from me by force. With whomever you find your gods, do not let him live. In the presence of our brethren, identify what I have of yours and take it with you. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, into Leah's tent, and into the two maids' tent, but he did not find them there. Then we went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols, put them in the camel's saddle, and sat on them. And Laban searched all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is with me. And he searched, but did not find the household idols. Then Jacob was angry and rebuked Laban, and Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me? Although you have searched all my things, what part of your household things have you found? Set it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us both. These 20 years I've been with you, your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried their young, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock. That which was torn by beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it. You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was, and the day of the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from my eyes. Thus I have been in your house 20 years. I have served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you've changed my wages 10 times. Unless the God of my father, the God of Abram, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night. And Laban answered and said to Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock. All that you see is mine. But what can I do to this day to these my daughters, or to their children whom they have borne? Now therefore come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Then Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there on the heap. Laban called it Yagal Sahaduta, but Jacob called it Galid. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore, its name was called Galid, also Mizpah, because he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. If you afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. Then Laban said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is a pillar which I have placed between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap, this pillar to me for harm. The God of Abram, the God of Nahor, and the God of their father judged between us, and Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his brethren to eat bread. And there they ate bread and stayed all night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban arose, kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. Wow. Oh,
Drama.
Drama. I tell you, man, it's so much drama. It's crazy. Oh, yeah. Well, we see the same kind of instincts in Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abram goes down to Egypt. She's my sister, not my wife. Isaac does the same thing. She's my sister, not my wife. And it gets him in this strange predicament, right? And so here, Jacob, instead of trusting God, who shows up to him and says, hey, remember, I'm the God of Beit El. Remember, you made that covenant, and I'm going to take you back. And he says, if you bring me back to my father's house in safety, Beshalom, then you can be my God. And God's like, okay, here I am. I'm gonna fulfill that. But then Jacob thinks that he needs to fear, right? Again, so many of these crises, unnecessary crises, happen because people are not trusting God. They are taking matters into their own hands. I mean, this is like, the days of our lives, right? This is like the soap opera. Why watch soap operas when you can read the Bible? I mean, this stuff is real, it's happening, and because they're not trusting God, but putting their fate into their own hands instead of into God's hands, who made promises to them, then they get into these crazy situations, and it just gets ugly.
It does. And it sounds simple, but it's only as difficult as we make it on ourselves. I mean, we can't be passive, right? As he goes through his resume of all the difficulty that he went through, maintaining the integrity of his business prowess and his promise to his father-in-law. And if it was cold, if I lost animals, I didn't put it on your ledger. I ate it. I took it. Okay. And then here, all that faithfulness, it's three-dimensional. The angel of the Lord is the one that appears to him, right? Who is none other than the Yeshua himself in a Christophany. So here's this Christophany that has appeared to him. And as extraordinary as that it may be, he didn't want to hold on to it. He wanted to do what he wanted to do and what he had a sense to do, and he would not trust. And that's our problem. The big problem in our Christian walk is the mirror. That's the problem. And the scripture is a very good mirror of who we are. Somewhere in there, we'll see ourselves many, 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 many times. As old as I am, it's hard to turn a page without seeing yourself. It's in circumstances that you thought you had gone beyond, and God says, okay, let's try this again. But this time, I know you're going to make it through. You'll be successful this time. And then we keep track of that. Let's say it didn't work. Well, this time, because I just wouldn't trust. And God says, I know, but I trust you to do the right thing. And it's that internal witness, that in our case, it's the Holy Spirit who is moving upon us. When you look at these men and you realize how frail we are compared to them as well, the Holy Spirit only would be upon them. And in no case do we see that the Holy Spirit is upon them. So they're toughing it out, grinding it out in their humanity. And the only thing they have is a vision or an experience. In this case, next time, it's going to be a little bit more physical. But the realities are that God is constantly waiting for us. And he's not going to put us down over it. He's going to say, let's try it again. Come on, get up, let's go. You know, I wouldn't have saved you unless I knew you were going to make it. All right. And he has that optimism for all of us, all the creatures of the earth that he has made that can respond to him in our humanity. He has already voted for us, and he proved it with his own blood. That's how he proved it. All we have to do is reach out and accept it and ask his Holy Spirit to move within our lives and have his word become a light unto our path.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, we're out of time.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to encourage people, if you guys don't know already, we have an app. It's called the Way Congregation app. You can get it if you're on an iPhone or an Android kind of device. Just go to those respective stores and put in the Way Congregation. Look for our little thing that's right up. Oh, here it is. This guy right up there. Yeah, that little thing. The menorah icon for the Way Congregation, and you'll see it. It will read the Torah portion to you, right? I mean, it can't get much easier than that. Just put this thing on. You can listen to it while you're doing the dishes or doing the laundry or doing your exercises or whatever you're doing, going for a walk, driving in the car. I don't know, is that legal? I don't know. Anyway, wherever you need to do it, you can listen to it and get it in that way. And you can, and it'll do it by day, right? It'll break it down for you so you can listen to it a little bit each day. So do definitely check that out. Get the app. If you want to consider yourself part of the Way congregation, whether you're here locally in Lakewood or you are out somewhere in the world, we're glad to have you with us. You can use the messaging app to submit questions for my show every Tuesday, or you can just use it to talk with one another. That's a pretty cool idea as well. So check that out. We have all kinds of resources on there. If you want to give, you can do that through the app as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. So glad you came with us. Tomorrow night on Prophecy Roundtable, we have a special guest. We're going to be talking about preterism. Oh, that's a crazy doctrine. Yuck, yuck, yuck. So should be a lot of fun. I hope you'll join us tomorrow night right here at 6 o'clock Mountain for that show. And I'm looking forward to it. So until next time, God bless you. And I pray that